Welcome in to the Rock Talk studio, where I find you the next great rock and roll book or documentary to check out, like today's book that answers the question, why do rock stars still do this? And after all these years, what's keeping them going? I'm your host, Big Rick. Join me for an exclusive look into what's hitting the shelves and the screens, and get ready to rock your reading and viewing list. And today, the spotlight falls on the book, I Hope I Get Old Before I Die, by David Hepworth. How did the rock stars we grew up with pull this off? They went from being idolized in their 20s, huge stars, and then something happened. Something happened to most of them as they got older, and that was they just stopped selling. So how did they manage to come back? Most of them appear again in the later stages of their lives and careers, and they became even more popular than they were when they first started out. And this is a conversation I have with a lot of my rock and roll buddies who follow rock and roll for years. It's like, what keeps these bands going? How are they still doing it? And why are they still doing it? And it's usually, Mick Jagger is one of the first ones that pops up. It's like, how is Mick pulling this off? And finally, someone has written a book about it. And it's not just someone. We've got David Hepworth on this one. And if you're not familiar with David, he's a great candidate for this. His background is in journalism and writing. He's been writing intelligently about music since the 70s. He launched the magazine Smash back in 79. He launched Q in 86, Empire in 88, and Mojo in 93. And those are some great music publications. He's also written a bunch of cool books. One of my favorites was 1971, Never a Dull Moment, Rock's Golden Year, which came out in 2021. Really cool book, and his career has given him this perspective that I think is really needed to tell a story like this. He's basically telling a story that spans from the 60s until today. And being inside the publishing business and around rock and rollers definitely has given him a leg up on being able to tell a story that covers so much ground. It's a massive undertaking, and he's got a good grasp of the whole picture, and it's needed here because he's basically writing a book about major moments, game changers in the history of rock and roll. And his delivery is one of my favorite parts of the book, his British wit. Sometimes, I've got to admit, I wasn't quite sure what he was referencing, but it worked. He definitely has a different thought-engaging writing style. His writing is very straightforward. It's not flash at all. It's not heavy or hard to get through. And it served as a nice way of delivering this look at how these rock stars aged and what led to their return to the spotlight. He begins the discussion with a major moment in rock and roll, not 1964 when the Beatles came to the U.S., not Woodstock in 69. It's actually not in the 60s at all, or the 70s. It's 1985. And can you guess what it was in 1985? I Hope I Die Before I Get Old starts with using Live Aid in 1985 as a launching off point. And Hepworth says it was the dawning of the age of spectacle. And I think that's a really good point because this book is not only about why rockers are still rocking, but what led to their return and what has been driving them to continue. A couple of things about Live Aid before I move on. I can't resist talking about it. I know everybody likes to talk about seeing shows for like $9, or they've got a ticket stub that says they saw a great Jethro Tull tour for $7. The latest Zeppelin documentary, Becoming Led Zeppelin, shows ticket stubs. I think it was like $4 or $5. Such an amazing doc. Don't get me started on that one. But can you guess how much tickets were for Live Aid in 1985? $35. $35. Unbelievable that you get to see that much rock and roll for $35, even back in 1985. I'm really testing your rock and roll trivia knowledge today. So at the time of Live Aid, another interesting thing was Mick Jagger was 42. Bowie was 38. Dylan was 44. And the older spokesperson, Tina Turner, she was 45. I remember that being kind of a comeback time for Tina. The book bounces around, hitting other pivotal points in rock and roll history where music and business advanced and brought back careers. MTV Unplugged's looked at, Dylan's Biograph box set, which led to the Beatles anthology. The 80s were not easy on classic rock stars of the 60s and 70s, and a lot of them lost their way to try to make sense on how to fit in with making videos for MTV, which was not something they were interested in. And Hepworth did a pretty good job of laying this all out because it's a big chunk of time to get through and challenging to summarize that type of point. So I'll give him an A for effort on that one. He made an interesting assumption that there are 3 ages of rockers' careers. The first is when your name is screamed and all your audiences are younger. The second stage takes you through the middle years and it's a little embarrassing. Your audience is old and it doesn't have time for you, and the test is to hang in there for the third stage. That's the golden one, where old parents come back, they bring their children, they're paying prices they've considered comical when they're in their teens, and you're back as a major draw. He makes some large assumptions at times. I can agree with that one above about the 3 stages. Here's one of them that raised an eyebrow, though, and here's another quote. Most successful songwriters find that when it comes down to it, all the value in their life's work amounts to about a half a dozen songs they wrote when they were just kids. I think it's a stretch. It's a stretch. I think you can say that maybe applies for a fair amount of artists, but you gotta respect what Dylan's doing and Neil Young's doing, and even the Stones' latest album I would consider a fine piece of work. So there are still some rockers out there making some good music. Hepworth ends the book with his thoughts about the Beatles, the band that became the thing that attracted him to music the most. He talks a lot about McCartney, who has someone he's been around more than a few times, and he also includes a playlist that he made at the end of the book that kind of sums up his feelings around this theme of older rock stars and how they've been able to carry on. It's an interesting book to read because we have time on our side now. We're actually watching something unfold. We're living in a time where rockers are still rocking in their 70s and 80s. Willie Nelson is in his 90s and he's still out there playing. This is uncharted territory, and this book has broad audience appeal about a subject that still has not written its final chapter. I Hope I Get Old Before I Die is written by David Hepworth and runs 288 pages. And this book was really good, but there was one thing that was missing, something that if it did include, it would have really taken this book over the top, and that's this week's one big question, and that's what I'm going to be answering coming up after the break. About 6 months ago, I sent out a survey to some of my listeners and asked them a bunch of questions, but one of them was, what more can I give you? What more can I offer you with the Rock Talk studio? And it was cool to see that most people were really pleased with the information. And I got to say, I'm pretty proud that I'm able to now, once I've got this thing going here and rolling, that I'm able to keep up on new rock and roll books and documentaries and be able to get that word out to you pretty quickly and share some really cool stuff that you might want to consider checking out. But one of the things people asked for were for giveaways. And one of the giveaways they asked for were, can you give away books? So I looked into that. I talked to a bunch of publishers and they've been on board. So I've been able to give away a bunch of really cool books. This month's book, though, I've got to say is, it's my favorite one of them all. I know it's hard to say that, but the new Mike Campbell memoir, Heartbreaker, which I'm giving away this month, is just a tremendous, tremendous read. Is so personal. It really gets Mike's voice and it really comes through. He tells these amazing stories about his time with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and the band and just all that evolved around his career. And I'm really, really happy and grateful to be able to give this book away. It's easy to get in on the contest. All you have to do is sign up for my newsletter, which I call the Rock and Roll Blast. It comes out one time a month, so I'm not going to spam you with a bunch of stuff. It's a quick read. I try to keep it under 5 minutes. Last Friday of the month is when it comes out, and it's free. The subscriptions right now are free, and it gets you entered to win the Mike Campbell memoir, Heartbreaker. Just send me an email at info@rocktalkstudio.com. I'll put that email address in the show notes, and just send me an email, say, Big Rick, hook me up, and I'll get you signed up, and you'll be entered into the contest to win the new Mike Campbell book. I also want to mention coming up next week, it's a big Tom Petty podcast. I'm going to be reviewing the new Tom Petty documentary, Heartbreakers Beach Party, and I'm going to be giving away on air that new book. So to get in on all that goodness, all you got to do is send me an email to get into the contest. Tune in next week and see if you've won the new Mike Campbell memoir. All right, the one big question about this book is what would have kind of taken it over the top? And I think there was something that stood out to me about this book. And I really enjoyed the overall approach of what he was going for here and what he was looking at. That was really cool to see. So, like, why are these older artists going out on these massive tours? And his major point of what brought them back most of all was money. Okay, I get it. They're getting money now that is life-changing. They're doing tours now that are just giving them and setting them up for life and setting their families up for life. And I get it. It's too big to pass up. But I would have liked to have seen the other side. And he explores it a little bit with Christine McVie, talks about it. And that is, why are they doing it? Other than the money, what keeps them going? I really wish he could have gotten to McCartney or Billy Joel or Dylan or Neil Young or Paul Simon, all those guys that are still out there rocking. And he's got such connections. It would have been really cool to hear him ask Mick Jagger, what keeps you going? And I know they've answered this question a little bit here and there. I've heard Dylan talk about, it's his job. This is just what he does. He's kind of like, a carpenter or a plumber. You don't ask them what keeps them going. It's just what they do. It's their job. And they enjoy it. And he talks about that in the book. They love the spotlight. They love to be out there performing. I get that too, but it really would have been cool to have a bunch of quotes for some of those rockers out there that are still going. Stevie Nicks, Billy Joel, just all those really cool people that are out there right now. I'm trying to mention all of them that I can think of at the top of my head, but wouldn't it be cool if we got quotes from them about what's keeping them going, what's keeping them rocking? That wraps it up for this week. Remember, next week's a big Tom Petty show. We're talking about the documentary Heartbreakers Beach Party. Going to be giving away the Mike Campbell book and going to be having a good time in the Rock Talk studio. I hope you join me next week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Love talking rock and roll with you and being able to give you the scoop on a title I think is worth your time and money. This one by David Hepworth was really cool. The book, I Hope I Get Old Before I Die. Check it out. All right, folks, it's time to tear it down, pack it up, and head on down the road. We'll see you next time in the Rock Talk studio.